Okay, so you just got the lowdown on the 5 food groups, which is a fantastic start. But that's really just the what. Now we're going to dig into the who and the why behind all that food advice you hear about. This is the story of how that advice gets made and how it's supposed to make its way from a scientific paper all the way to your dinner plate.
Right. So you can probably list the food groups, no problem. But have you ever stopped to think, who actually decides all this stuff? Who writes the rules for the whole country? Because this advice doesn't just come out of thin air. There's a whole process behind it, and that's what we're going to unpack.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the official source, the actual rule book for nutrition in the US. Then, we'll do a quick history tour to see how the advice has been presented over the years. We'll break down the tool we use today, check out some major updates that are coming, and finally, we'll see how the official guidance stacks up against what people are actually eating.
All right, let's jump in. First up, the official nutrition rulebook. This is the big one, the foundation for everything else. It's called the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, and pretty much all national food advice, from school lunches to health campaigns, starts right here.
So what exactly is it? Well, think of it as the master document. It pulls together all the current, credible scientific knowledge we have about food and health. And its job is really twofold. First, to guide big picture stuff like national food policies, and second, to help create the educational tools, like the ones you see in class, that help us all make healthier choices. And here are a few key things you should know about it. It's a team effort published by both the USDA, that's the Department of Agriculture, and Health and Human Services. And this isn't some dusty old book. It gets a full scientific review and an every update every 5 years, so it's always based on the latest research. The current version is actually a big deal because it's the very first one to have recommendations for literally every stage of life, from babies to seniors. Of course, most of us aren't going to sit down and read a huge government report, right? So for decades, the real challenge has been translating all that science into a simple picture that anyone can understand. And that brings us to the visual history of food advice.
And what a history it's been. I mean, look at this evolution. It started way back in 1943 with a whopping 7 food groups. Then came the food wheel in the 80s, and of course, the iconic food guide pyramid in 1992. A lot of us grew up with that one. In 2005, things went digital with MyPyramid. And finally, in 2011, we landed on the super streamlined MyPlate we use today. You can see the trend, right? It's been a constant push towards making the advice simpler and more practical.
So let's zoom in on what we have now. MyPlate is basically our modern-day game plan, and it's designed to make following those big official guidelines as easy as just looking at your own dinner plate. The genius of it is really its simplicity. It's just a plate, and it's split into 4 main sections: fruits, vegetables, grains, and protein, with dairy sitting there on the side. The goal isn't to make you count every single calorie or gram of fat. It's all about proportions. It's a visual shortcut for building a balanced meal.
So how do you actually use it? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Step 1 is all about those proportions. The single biggest takeaway is to try and make half of your plate fruits and vegetables. From there, you can actually personalize it online. It'll adjust your targets based on your age, your sex, your activity level. At the end of the day, it's a quick visual checklist to make sure you're getting a good balance of nutrients without overdoing it. Okay, this is where things get really interesting. Because the science is always evolving, the guidelines are getting another update right now, and the next version represents a really big shift in thinking. So let's take a look at what's coming in the new 2025-2030 playbook.
This right here is the heart of the change. The old way was all about counting individual nutrients, grams of fat, grams of carbs. The new focus is shifting towards the quality of the food itself. It's about prioritizing whole foods and minimally processed foods over the stuff that comes in a crinkly bag. It's a move from asking what's in it to asking what is it.
And if you need proof of how serious this new direction is, just look at this quote, which comes from the scientific report for the upcoming guidelines. No amount of added sugar is recommended. Wow, that's a huge shift. It's not just eat less sugar. The new recommendation is to aim for none at all. That's a really powerful statement.
So, this table gives you a snapshot of the new framework. On the left, that's the stuff you want to build your diet around. Different kinds of protein, dairy with no sugar added, lots of colorful fruits and veggies, healthy fats, and whole grains. And on the right, you have the things to limit: highly processed foods, refined carbs, and especially those added sugars.
So, we have this clear, evolving advice that's getting better and better. But that brings us to the million-dollar question. Are people actually following it?
let's take a look at the gap between the official guidance and what's really happening on American plates.
And well, the hard truth is, for the most part, the answer is no. Despite all the pyramids and plates and public health campaigns, the data shows over and over again that most Americans are not eating according to the dietary guidelines.
This chart really paints the picture. When you compare the recommended amounts of fruits, vegetables, and dairy to what people are actually eating, there's a huge gap. We are consistently falling way short in these really crucial areas.
And on the flip side of that, we're overdoing it in other areas. The typical American diet has way too much sodium, way too many added sugars, and too much saturated fat. And this really matters because this exact eating pattern is directly tied to the rise in chronic diseases like heart disease and type 2 diabetes. So this gap isn't just a statistic, it has real-world health consequences.
Which brings us to our final question, and it's a big one. The advice is getting simpler and clearer, especially with this new focus on real food. And yet, that gap between the guidance and reality is as wide as ever. So the thing to really think about is this. If the advice is simpler than ever, why is it still so incredibly hard for so many people to follow it?